Hello, I'm Gal. This is my grandfather Carmel. We decided today to have this conversation following the death of Woolfie Marmot this Wednesday. I was very close to him. I knew him a few years. My grandfather knew him a little bit longer. And we thought it would be a good way to commemorate his life by talking a little bit about him. And so, where should we start, Saba?
I suggest we start the day I met Woolfie. It so happened that at the age of 18, after high school, I studied for 1 year law in Jerusalem. And I worked in the British mandate in the government. I exchanged with another student. His name was Yoram Berman. It was a famous bakery in Jerusalem, the Berman bakery that exists till today. And Yoram was about the age of 14 or 15. He wanted to study marine, and the school of marine, school of naval school, merchant navy school, was in Haifa. So he moved to live with our family, and I lived in Jerusalem in his family, and everything was fine. I was 18 when I came to Jerusalem, and it was towards the end of World War II. And on the street in Jerusalem, I think I walked with my cousin Aya Rupin. We met Woolfie, who was stationed. He came from England. He was stationed in Egypt, and together with a friend of him, he came to Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, there was a Jewish club for Jewish people who served in the war, in the World War II. And as I said, Woolfie and a friend of his came from Egypt, and they came to the club in Jerusalem, and there they met my cousin Helen, and they met each other. Helen was a very good-looking girl, very smart, very nice. Woolfie also was a young, nice soldier, and they became friends. I met Woolfie on the street, and we talked about it. And later on, I saw them again once or twice. Woolfie went back to Egypt. Then he came again. And the friendship between them developed. Later on, Helen went back to France, and then she came back to Israel. Woolfie moved to Israel. He left Egypt, and he joined in Binyamina, where we had a family. There was also a British station, a British military camp. I think he was teaching there or something. And Helen was there. My grandmother, Shifra Batia Cohen, the wife of Mordechai ben Hillel Cohen, my grandfather, she lived in Binyamina after our grandfather passed away. And the friendship between Woolfie and Helen developed, and they decided to get married. As I said, I was about 18 years old, and since then till today, our friendship, our family friendship, so to say, always developed. We met each other in different countries, and all our life we were somehow connected and together. And I must say that I loved Woolf very much. Our connection was very close, and many opportunities, our ways were connected to each other. Now it's about a week since Woolfie died. I was very sad. Before that, I must say that Woolfie was the first, I was one of the first family member in Israel that met Woolfie. And I would like also to say that our friendship was very close, and we used to see each other a lot.
And this relationship, it wasn't just between you and Woolfie, it was something that was it was intergenerational. Like you said, when my family was there, when I was a baby and they were in Paris, when I was a student in Paris, he was always there for the family, and I think you were also there for his family, and we were very close and looking after each other.
Gal, you're absolutely right, but let me tell you something. In life there are many, especially in our family. Our family is quite close to each other, and we used to meet each other. And it so happened that a year after I met Woolfie, I went back to Haifa. I stayed only 1 year in Jerusalem studying law and working. And then I came back to Haifa, and I worked in the port. And the Second World War was finished. I joined the Israel Independence Service. I joined the army. I was fighting in the Galilee. I was fighting in the Negev, and I participated in Mishmar HaEmek, Juara, in the war with the War of Independence. And later on, I joined. No, before that, I'm sorry. Before I went to the army, I would like to tell you something. My father died when I was 19. He suddenly died. He was 60 when he died from a heart attack. I worked at the port. I came home for lunch. I was with my father and my mother at lunch, and my father suddenly got a heart attack and passed away. Now, I had an uncle, Theo Benachum, who was in France. Actually, it so happened that my father and mother were first cousins. Nowadays, first cousins don't get married, but at that time, it was customary that they could marry, and they married. So my two grandmothers were sisters. And it was, my mother was an only daughter with 6 brothers. And one of the brothers was Theo Benachum, and we were very close to each other. And when my father passed away, Theo Benachum, who lived in France at that time, invited my mother and me to come after the funeral and after the Shiva, to come and be with them for 2 months in Paris. I have only one brother, and that's Nomik. Nomik at that time was a student in America. And I came to Paris together with my mother. When I came to Paris, I had an aunt. The aunt was Dina Brochet, the mother of Hélène. And at that time, Hélène and Woolfie were married. They moved to live in England. And it so happened that one day, Dina, my aunt, came to me and told me, do me a big favor. I noticed that you are very friendly with your Uncle Theo. It would be better if you talk to Theo about what I ask you to talk. Better that you talk and not me. That's what she said. I am not very happy that Helene lives now in London. She's married to Woolfie, and I would like them to come back to France. And it's quite difficult for Woolfie to come to France, but I would like very much, if it's possible, that Theo would hire him and offer him a job in France, because Theo Benachum at that time was a manager of Reynolds Pen. Reynolds Pen was a famous company that manufactured ball pens. Before that, there were no ball pens. It was one of the first ball pen factories in Europe. And she asked me if I'm ready to talk to Theo and see if Woolfie can join the company and so on. So I say, yes, why not? I talked to Theo, and within half an hour, it was agreed that Woolfie will meet Theo, and we will offer Woolfie to manage one of the factories, because Woolfie at that time in England, if I'm not mistaken, managed a factory that manufactures some shirts or something, some textile shirts. So he had some connection to manufacturing. And that's how Woolfie joined Reynolds Company and became a manager of one of the factories, maybe in France and later in Holland. I didn't tell Woolfie till about 3 or 4 years ago that the story how his mother-in-law asked me to help him get this job. Anyhow, just a coincidence. But during all these years since then, I met Woolfie and Helene very often in different countries. I met them in France. Later, I became a seaman, and I joined the Zim company, and then I was sent to be a cadet on Holland America Line, on the Holland America Line, on the Windam and on the New Amsterdam. And the ship came very often to Rotterdam, and Woolfie was stationed with Reynolds Company in Holland, and I met them. Later on, after a year being a cadet in the Holland America Line, I came back and joined the Zim ships, and I was on a cargo ship. I was an officer, and I used to come to Holland. Once I even brought my mother with me, and we went to see Woolfie and Helene. Just to give an example how we met each other from time to time in different positions, different places. And our friendship was quite developing and quite tight. I liked Woolfie very much. I adored the man. He was a special man. He was not a usual man. He had a heart. He was very well received in the family. He was an excellent worker. I know that Theo appreciated his work very much. And we used to meet in different places. Years later, I was a student in America. Woolfie at that time was with Helene, working with Reynolds Company in America, and we used to see each other. And I remember that I lived in Washington, D.C. I studied in Washington. A year later, I came to study in New York. I studied shipping. I always worked. All my life I worked. And in New York, I worked 1 year in an American company called American Export Line, American Shipping Company. And the office of American Shipping Company, where there were in New York 1,500 employees, only 10 Jewish people were there. I was one of them. I worked there as a trainee in the university and went to NYU. And the office was very near to the office of Theo Ben-Achum and Woolfie. And I would say that once a week or so, I used to have lunch with them. So again, it was in America, and a very close relationship. And I was close also to his colleague, Ben Krieger, who also worked with Theo Ben-Achum. So we were a group that met each other from time to time. I think when Nomik, my brother, got married to Judy Nan, there was a small wedding on Bell Island where Judy Nan family lived. And if I'm not mistaken, the parents of Helen, Dina, and her husband, both of them were doctors. Dina was a doctor. Her husband was also a doctor. And they lived together with Helen and Woolfie when they lived in America. They came to the wedding. If I'm not mistaken also, when I moved from Washington to New York, I had a car.
Woolfie loved the story.
You love the story?
Wolfie loved the story.
Yes, what did they tell you, Woolfie? So I will tell you. I moved from Washington to New York. I offered to sell the car, my car, to Woolfie. And I sold him, I think it was a Chevrolet. I sold him the car for $400. But I told him, I want you to know, the car is a wonderful car. It's not new, used car. But at that time, the cars were not automatic like today. So you had to move the gear. So to go back, how do you call it?
Reverse.
The reverse did not work well. So I told Woolfie it doesn't work well. So Woolfie said, okay. I sent a friend of mine, with whom I also afterwards was a great friend, and his name was Shlush, Ronnie Shlush. He went from New York to Washington, saw the car. I told him there's a problem with the reverse. He took the car and he drove it to New York and gave it to Woolfie. They bought the car for me. And there's a big business we had. I sold him my used car. And he kept the car for 1 year or 2 years or something, till he went back to France. So anyhow.
But there was something with the pistachio. Do you remember there was something?
Ah, yes, correct. That's a good thing. In the car, I had a bag of pistachio nuts. So he got the nuts, the pistachio. He got everything that was in the car, all for $400. Anyhow, I had a lot of things with Woolfie. I don't want to take too much of your time. We were very close. And with Helen, I was very close. She was a special woman. She was the only cousin we had who actually, her father was French. Their father and mother met while they were students in medicine in the Sorbonne, and they lived in France. They also stayed in France during the Holocaust. They were saved because Louis was a major in the French army. And they didn't know that Dina was Jewish. They thought she's Russian or something. Somehow they were saved.
Louis, Helene's father.
A big man?
Louis is Helene's father. Louis is Helene's father?
No, not Woolfie's grandfather.
Louis.
Louis was the father of Helene. Louis Brochet, a charming man. He was the only non-Jewish man for my father's side, there were 7 children. Mordechai ben Hillel Cohen, who was a famous, what do you show? You see the statue of Mordechai ben Hillel Cohen, was my grandfather from my father's side. He was a famous writer. He was a Zionist leader. He was also an industry man. In Russia, he had a big business. He moved at the age of 50 to Israel with 7 children. At that time, some children, the elderly children, went to university. And 3 children, David, Hillel, and Shimon Acquaintances, were young. They went to the school in Tel Aviv. Mordechai ben Hillel Hacohen was one of the 65 first citizen building Tel Aviv.
One of the founders of Tel Aviv.
One of the founders of Tel Aviv. He was also, with Dizengoff was the mayor. Mordechai ben Hillel Hacohen was member of the city. He was the secretary of the city. No pay, volunteer. Mordechai ben Hillel Hacohen also established, together with some other people, the Gymnasia Herzl.
Gymnasia Herzliya.
Gymnasia Herzliya in Tel Aviv. He was a special man. And for my mother's side, because I mentioned to you that my 2 grandmothers were sisters, so my mother's side was an only sister, only daughter, with 6 brothers. And the families were very close to each other. We always had good relationship. And somehow Dina was a very charming aunt to me. We liked her very much. She liked us very much. Whenever we came to France, it was a pleasure to be there. And Woolfie and Helen were actually, although they didn't live in Israel, they met in Israel. They liked each other. They married in Israel. If I'm not mistaken, they married in Israel. Maybe they married in France now. I don't want to mislead someone. But anyhow, we were very close wherever we lived, with all the family. Carmela and Yigal Yadin were very close to Helen and Woolfie. And later on, when Carmela passed away and when Yigal Yadin passed away, Woolfie and Helen were very close to Aya and Sevi. And later on, when they passed away, I think that Rachel Rabin Yaakov and her husband, who were members of the Manara, Kibbutz Manara, they were very close to Helen and Woolfie. They used to take summer holidays together. And years later, everyone knows that we had twice a year, the cousins were meeting, the cousins of the family. And usually we made the meetings when Woolfie used to visit Israel. He visited Israel permanently, twice a year. His daughter, Claire, married Kobe, who was a member of a kibbutz. Claire came to study in Jerusalem University as a student. Kobe was a student from Kibbutz Na'an, also in the Jerusalem University. And they got married and they lived in the kibbutz. They have 5 wonderful children. And Woolfie, if I'm not mistaken, was a member of the board of Tel Aviv University. So twice a year he used to come here with his brother to join the board of the Tel Aviv University. And then when we used to meet all the cousins together. In the beginning, the group was something like 13 or 14 cousins with the wives. It was already 30 people. And it usually, we met in a restaurant or we met in Binyamina. And it was very nice. It lasted for many years. Later on, there were unfortunately, less cousins. Little by little, some died. And just about a year ago, Woolfie called me from Paris and said, listen, Karik, when I come now, very soon I'll be 100 years old. I don't want to wait too long, and I would like to have the meeting, although I'm not yet 100 years old, but I would like to have the meeting in before. So what do I think about it? How can we organize it? He says, usually when we had these meetings, each one paid for the lunch or whatever it was. But this time he says he wants to invite them. I also remember I invited once when I had a birthday. And also I used to have birthdays where I invited bigger number of family. And so he asked me, what do I think? So when he talked to me on the phone, I said, listen, I have an idea, because then already Rafi Rupin, who nearly was 100 and he died before, but he was not alive anymore. Nomi Kaplansky passed away, and even Chezi passed away. So the number of the cousins were smaller. So I told Woolfie, I suggest to you, maybe we should invite the younger generation, the children of the cousins. Since you are going to be 100, it would be nice to have a little bigger party and not just few. And we should get the younger people, and this will also give an idea to continue the meetings of the cousin with the younger generation. He said, yes, it's a wonderful idea, but where shall we do it? And it all was on the telephone. And I say, I think, he said, in Binyamina, it's difficult for Carmela to arrange it now and all this. So I said, listen, I have an idea. Maybe we should do it at Merkaz Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin was our cousin, second cousin.
At the Rabin Center.
Rabin Center. As you know, the mother of Yitzhak Rabin and Rachel Rabin was Rosa Khan, Rosa Rabin. Rosa was the first cousin of my father, this generation. And Rachel used to always participate in our cousin meeting, Rachel Rabin Yaakov, with her husband. From Anara she used to come. Then her husband died. She came alone, but she always there. So I told Woolfie, I'll try to organize it. I called Claire and asked her, and she says, also it's a good idea. And I called Rachel, and Rachel organized that we can have early birthday, so to say, of Woolfie. 100 years, he was not yet 100, but we can celebrate because he doesn't come to Israel every month. And it's a nice place, but there is no restaurant there. There's only a cafe. So Claire and I, we organized this affair, and I asked my daughter-in-law, Uzi Acquaintances, the wife of Danny, to do me a favor and get a good caterer for lunch, because she had the Zappa wonderful business. She knew all this business of food and get together and everything, music. So she got for us a very good caterer, and it was not only lunch; it was a buffet. It started with the affair, and it didn't close. It stayed till the end. So we had about 50 people, 2 generations, cousins, and children of the cousins. And
that's four generations, I think we have.
Well, maybe, and some exceptions. Some additional few people that were close to Woolfie and to Woolfie, of course. the children, so on. Anyhow, it was a very nice thing. It was something like that, but unfortunately, a little bit before this birthday, our cousin Navon Acquaintances passed away. And actually, it was quite sudden. I went to Binyamina, I think 10 days before he passed away. I had a very nice talk to him. He was a bit sick, but no one expected that he would die. And I spent 2 hours with Navon, with Carmela. And a week later, he went to a hospital, and unfortunately, Navon died. So I thought that we will not be able to hold the get-together of the cousins for Woolfie. But I must say that Carmela and her children were extremely nice, and they say we should not delay it. And actually, the date we fixed for the cousins meeting was 2 or 3 days after the Shiva. And they insisted that we should not change the date, and we should keep the date. And the affair was very successful. Of course, we mentioned Navon. We started with Navon because he passed away. But his ideas, his feelings were there. We talked about him, and Yoram spoke about him, and some other people spoke about Navon. And then we moved to congratulate Woolfie. And I was very glad that we were able to do it, and Woolfie was very touched. I also organized a photographer, and it was Aki, who is the friend of Daphna, the husband of Daphna. Aki took pictures, and we took a movie that Rupin made it from Jerusalem, you know. Yeah. He made the movie, and Aki made the pictures, and we got the people together before in the middle of this affair, and it was very nice. Now, a few months later, Woolfie had the right date for the birthday. But before this, I want to tell you, Gal, that during all the years since I met Woolfie, till he became 100 years old, and he's the first one in our family, eingeheiratet. He's eingeheiratet. You know what eingeheiratet is? He's he's married to the family. But he was like born to the family, because Woolfie was a special man. He helped me, I helped him. We made this to the children, we were very close to the children, so on. Even you made your last semester for your undergraduate, you made it in Paris, right?
And the first semester of my master's degree.
What?
And the first semester of my master's
degree. And you started your master's degree?
In Paris.
In Paris. So you were in Paris 8 months. You were alone there. And this was actually your second home there. You went to Woolfie and everything. I also remember that when your father, who served in the Navy, he finished the Navy, he graduated at Technion, Shmulik graduated at Technion. And after he graduated at Technion, he worked here. And later he wanted to study for master. He came to Paris, and he took his family. He took your mother, he took the children, and he spent in Paris 1 year. It took him to study for master degree in English in a very good university in Paris. You remember the name of the university?
Ponte Chaussee.
Mount?
Ponte Chaussee.
Ponte Chaussee. He took his master degree in Ponte Chaussee. And the deal was that he could get his master's in 3 semesters, 1 year, and he has to work 6 months in a French company. It was a must. I organized for him to work in the French railway, because the French railway was connected to the Israeli railway, and I was connected to the port and the railway. So I organized for your father to work in the railway. But it also, your father, Shmulik, was quite close to Helen and Woolfie. And Woolfie offered him to work in his company. And he thought that it's more convenient and it's better for him to work for Woolfie. And I had to take, because I arranged through connections in Israel, I arranged for your father to be in the railway. And I said, no, we cannot, it's difficult for him now. So he worked for Woolfie's company. And not 6 months, he stayed there for 1 year. And I know that Woolfie offered him to continue and stay and work in his company, and even he will be owner 10% of the company. This is what your father told me. And I think it was very nice of Woolfie to do it. But your father said, no, I would like to return to Israel, take the family, come back to Israel. And I know that when he stayed with Woolfie and Helen, your father, Gal, stayed in the house whenever they lived. So they left the dog, they left the house, and he stayed there. And also he had a summer home next to the sea, and you went with him, with Woolfie and Helen to the summer home. You really felt like at home. So I want to say that Woolfie was a special man, really special man. And he has wonderful 3 daughters. One lives in London, one lives next to him in France, and one lives in Inan. And
lives in La Vazine in
France. Right.
Francine in London.
In England, and Claire in Nan. And all the 3 daughters are wonderful, charming, and their children are wonderful. And they had a great grandmother, Helen, and a great grandfather, Woolfie. And when Helen passed away, we were all very sorry. Now when Woolfie had his birthday in France, and then he had another birthday in London, maybe it was a little bit too much. So, and he had one in Tel Aviv before. So anyhow, and he was, even at the age of 100, he was like a young man. He drove, he traveled, he did a lot of things, but somehow his heart did not, how do you say it, his heart failed. Yeah. And he went to hospital. I called my granddaughter, Yael. I didn't tell her the name of the hospital. Yael says, leave it to me. I will find out what hospital he stays. She found out. She knew the hospital. And she assisted as much as she can. And the 3 daughters were all there. I even talked to Woolfie on the phone. And he was about to leave the hospital and go back to France. There was a problem how he will go back, but all this. But at the end, unfortunately, 2 days after I talked to him, he passed away. I was, for me, it's a big loss. Big loss. He was, I would say, like a brother to me. And what I'm very happy is that he has a wonderful relationship with his 3 daughters, with his grandchildren, with the whole family, and we will cherish Cherry. He also wrote a book about his life. He wrote about the book about the family. We have a lot of memories, and for us, he is a sample of how people should behave, how people should help each other. And he helped us, and we helped him, and this is a wonderful thing, and the family should continue it. Just, I would like to mention that a few months ago, Claire gave a party in Na'an to all the family. It was right after the wedding of my grandson Tal with Mor, and I had here in Israel my 4 nephews, the children of Nomik and Judy Nan. They all came to the wedding of Tal and Mor. And later, 2-3 days after, we had this affair, family affair in Na'an. It was a great pleasure. It's a wonderful affair. Again, we made the picture, and Aki took the picture, a family picture. It was beautiful. It's a nice memory, and I think we should continue. The family should continue to meet each other, to help each other, and get together. There are no fights in our family. Everyone has a good relationship. I am lucky that also with my wife family, Denise, there are very good relationship, as you know it, Gal. And Woolfie was a sample to all of us. I wish that the whole family will remember him, and I know they will, and that we will continue meet each other and be together, and the spirit of Woolfie and Helen will be there.
I think also one of the things I noticed one of the things Woolfie told me when I met him in Paris when I was living there is his connection to the legacy of the family and the history of the family, and it was very important to him. And yes. I think it's very nice that we went on this trip now through history and talked about different things in the family, because it was very important to Woolfie. And I think I learned from him that it's important, this history, this connection to the family, to Israel, to Judaism, all sorts of things that he was connected with. I had a wonderful time when I was with him in Paris. He used to help me. He used to read my papers and tell me, you have to change this word and you have to do this. And he was like 97 at the time, 96 at the time, and he was reading everything, and he was really, really a wonderful person.
Well,
do you have any last things we want to say?
Last thing I would like to say, first of all, that it was your idea, Gal, that we should speak about Woolfie. We have now, you have a camera, and you like to take care and make memories, family memories and other things. And I wish you all the best. And Woolfie has a grandson. He's a wonderful fellow who lives in America, in New York now.
Jerome.
Jerome, yes, I know Jerome. He's a wonderful fellow. And I saw a movie he made about Woolfie. So what we did now is just the beginning of thing. You speak to him and learn from him. We should learn from each other. And I wish him all the best, because I saw the movie he made about Woolfie when we had the affair in Rabin Center. It's a privilege to have an affair in Rabin Center. Rabin was a special, special man. It's a big honor for us. I got a book now. Here, I'll show you this book that a very famous writer, Shai Chorev. This is his 30th book. He wrote books connected to the Zionist movement, book about Haifa, book about famous families in Israel, book about, here is the book about the 50 most famous families in Israel. Our family is one of them there. And the last book he wrote is about the generals in Israel, Ramatkalim, the chief of staff. And as you know, in our family, we are lucky to have 2 chief of staffs. First one was Yigal Yadin. He married Carmel Arupin. He's like Woolfie, eingeheiratet, joined the family. The other one is Yitzhak Rabin, whose mother was a first cousin of my father. And it's a wonderful book. It's already sold out, different, but it's nice memories. So you, Gal, if I may say, you finished high school in England and in America. You're fortunate to have 2 languages, Hebrew and English, as main mother tongue of you. And you've been to a special unit in the Navy in Israel, very important. And you studied actually in the Herzliya Ben-Tchumi. It's a wonderful university, great university. We have a cousin there, Gili Dinstein, in a top job. And you have 2 degrees from this university. You should continue your studies. Maybe one day you'll be a professor. Maybe you like research. Also your sister likes research. She's not only a doctor in England, she's also a big researcher, and it's very important. And education is very important. I wish you all the best, and successful also with what you're doing now, taking the history of the family. Thank you, Gal.
Thank you, Saba.
בהצלחה.
Thank you, and I hope we have some nice memories of Woolfie, and I hope that we remain strong, the family. And thank you everybody for watching. We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gal.